So let's see, someone's chimed in. Sorry, good. Joixa, you're all good. All right, so section 8.5, we now go move into another method of factoring, which is known as MAF plus. MAF plus. So let's remind ourselves where we've been. We have three factoring methods. Greatest common factor, we can use anytime, anywhere, any place. Grouping, we need 4 terms to use it. MAF, we need 3 terms to use it. So greatest common factor always kicks things off. And then the other 2 we use if we have enough terms to use. So to this point, we have only been we've been primarily using MAF to get things done. And MAF works when the leading coefficient is 1. So notice that for these expressions, you have a leading coefficient of 1. Now you're probably thinking, but Mr. Lowe, look at the last one, it has a leading coefficient of 2. That's true, but since you're supposed to take out the greatest common factor before you do MAF, the 2, the 18, and the 44 are divisible by 2, and you can take out the letter D. So this is really 2D parentheses D squared minus 9D minus 22. Now you have a 1 in front, so now you can use MAF that way. So far that's how our problem has worked. What we have not touched is if that number is something other than 1. Like these 2 problems sitting there. 2x squared plus 11x plus 12, 4x squared plus 16x plus 15. It's still 3 terms. But if it doesn't have 1 in front, can we still use MAF? The answer is yes. So we're still going to be using MAF, but in addition to MAF, we're going to be using greatest common factor, and we're going to be using grouping. So this process is a little bit longer because we're using everything that we know. So now we're using everything that we know. So if you are still struggling with the greatest common factor, and you're not saying anything, and you're not communicating, you're not asking for help, it's getting to the point where, okay, there's not going to be much I can do to help you if you don't speak up and start telling me what's wrong. I can see your work. You either know what you're doing or you don't. So, today we're going to introduce the concept of MAF plus. How do we actually go about doing it? So, the first 2 examples are already done for us. That way, all you have to do is watch, listen, and ask questions. The first 2 examples that we're going to work with are already done for us. That way, all you need to do is watch, listen, ask questions as you have. Now, I know a couple of you will pick up on it right away and be able to solve your own problems. So for those people who wish to work ahead, you can, once you have an understanding of what you're doing, you can go on to example number 3. But for everyone else, what we're going to do at 1 and 2, I'm going to explain it from start to finish. All you have to do is watch, listen, and ask questions. Because technically this is already written down for you. So let's start with the problem that we have. 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. The first step is always the same. Find the greatest common factor. If there is one, divide it out. So, 2, 11, and 12. The only number that can divide out of all of them, is 1. Remember, the key there is all of them. Same variable. They all don't have the same variable. So that means your greatest common factor is 1. If your GCF is 1, then you can just keep going. That's simple. So this is step number 1. Find the greatest common factor. Step 2. Identify A, B, and C. So where does A, B, and C come from? A is the number that sits in front of x squared. B is the number in front of x. And C is the number with no letter. So A is the number in front of x squared. Which in this case would be 2. B is the number in front of x. And C is the number with no letter on it. So that's 12. So A is 2, B is 11, C is 12. That's step number 2. Any questions before we continue? All right, step 3. So now we're going to transform this into an MAF problem. So this is how we transform it to MAF. So M, we take A and C and multiply it together. So take the A and the C, multiply it together. 2 times 12 is 24. The A value, you just rewrite the B value. So B is 11. So the add value is 11. So we know the M and we know the A. F is still the same. Find 2 numbers that multiply to 24. Multiply to 24 and add to 11. 8 and 3. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 plus 3 is 11. That's step 3. Step 4. Rewrite the middle term using the 2 numbers. Again, if you have a question, come off mute and ask. You don't have to wait until the end, just ask. Take the middle term and rewrite it. So the middle term was 11. Your numbers were 8 and 3. So you're going to split it up into 8 and 3. So there's your 8, there's your 3. So there's 2 questions that people will ask. 1, why are there x's attached to the 8 and the 3? Because there was an x attached to the 11. That's why. 2, could I have switched those 2 around? Could the 3 have gone first? Yeah. You can put those in whatever order you want. The reason why I put 8 next to the 2 is because I know 2 divides into 8. The reason why I put 3 next to the 12 is because I know 3 divides into 12. So remember, if you're good with your basic multiplying, basic dividing, a lot of this is going to actually become simple. But you have to know how to multiply and divide. You're not going to finesse that like you may have been able to do earlier. A little bit harder to finesse. So, that's step 4, splitting it apart. Step 5, split the problem into 2 groups. So on your screen, you see that there's one part that's in yellow and one part that's in blue. I split them into two groups. Just like you did with a grouping crop. Factor each group using GCF. So if you just look at the first group, 2 and 8, you can divide out 2, you can take out next. 2x, parentheses, x plus 4. 3 and 12, you can divide out 3. Plus 3, and then x plus 4. I want you to look at what's in parentheses. This will help you. If this is done correctly, you should have 2 matching parentheses, 2 matching expressions in parentheses. And when you look at that, you have 2 things matching in parentheses. Well, so far you've done everything right. All you have to do is write your final answer. So since those 2 match, those go in one parentheses. After you divide them out, those cancel out, 2x plus 3. That's in the other parentheses. The order of the parentheses doesn't matter as long as you have both. That's the end of the problem. Now, for those of you who are thinking that's a super long problem, keep in mind I'm explaining it very, very slowly. That's number 1. Number 2, how long it takes you to do this problem depends on how well you know how to multiply, add, take the greatest common factor, and follow some simple directions. But this also means for some of you, you have to learn how to open your mouth and ask some questions. You have to learn how to do your homework, start your homework before 10 o'clock the night before it's due. So if you struggle, it's on you. So before we go to example 2, we're literally going to take a minute. I'm going to be completely quiet. And I'm going to make sure that there's no questions that aren't sitting out there. Maybe you might need a second to think about a question that you might have. But literally, we're literally going to take a minute. And in a minute, we'll go to example 2. I'm going to be quiet for a full minute. So, if that pause seemed awkward, step 3 had me a little confused. Okay. All right, Shemaiah, you got to tell me what it had you confused about. Got to ask the question. You can come off of mute. Your voice ain't that bad. My voice is bad. But your voice is not bad. You got to tell me where you're confused. Speak up. Speak up. I can barely hear you. But don't wait until the end. I need you to learn how to interrupt the person. You're not being rude to an adult. You got to interrupt people. So that means it was probably confusing when we did it, right? So don't wait. Don't wait. You're not going to hurt my feelings by interrupting me. Trust me, my son does it all the time. He'll be all right. I'll be all right. So, identify the values of A, B, and C. So A, B, and C are the numbers in front of those variables. A is whatever number is in front of x squared. So if you have 2x squared, that means A is equal to 2. B is the number in front of x. So 11x means 11 is your B value. C is the number that doesn't have a variable attached to it. So C is equal to 12. So in order to do MAF, since A is not equal to 1, you have to identify all three numbers. So this is actually pretty similar to what we were doing. You just didn't have to do it the long way. Think about what we did before all this. If you had x squared plus 5x plus 6, A was just equal to 1, B was equal to 5, and C is equal to 6. So to find the M, 1 times 6 was 6. Anything times 1 is itself. So we didn't have to do it this way, because you're just going to be multiplying times 1. Now that you're multiplying times another number, we have to do it the long way. So the grouping part comes after you find out what the numbers are. So until you finish MAF, you can't do grouping until you get to MAF.
Okay.
So, notice that I'm not mad at Shemaya. She asked a question. Ain't nothing wrong with asking questions. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't ask a question and you still suck. Now, that's the worst thing that can happen. So, let's look at example 2. Again, the example's done for you. We're just going to go look at it step by step. Now, for those people who understood example 1, understood example 2, example 3's in the corner. You can start on it, and I'll tell you what the answer will be. That way you can check your own work. So that's your answer for those people who are going to move on to example 3 because they know what they're doing right now. So for example 2, you got 9y to the third plus 39y squared minus 30y. Steps are still the same. Step 1, find the GCF of the whole thing. So you got 9, 39, and 30. You can divide out of 3. All of them have y's, so you can take out a y. So your greatest common factor is 3y. Since you have a greatest common factor, you divide it out. sits out in front. And 3y squared plus 13y minus 10 is what's left over. So that's step one. Step one's in black. Step two, A, B, and C. So remember, A is the number in front of x squared. B is the number in front of x. C is the number with no variable. Number with no letter. So A is 3, B is 13, and C is negative 10. So you use A, B, and C to do MAF. So you need step 2 to do step 3. So to get M, you take the first and the last number and multiply it together. 3 times negative 10 is negative 30. The B value, you move over. That becomes your add value. So you need two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to 13. 13 and negative 2. Any questions, steps 1, 2, or 3? All right, step 4. Rewrite the middle term using the two numbers that you just got. We just got 15 and negative 2. So take the 13 and rewrite it as with the 15 and with the negative 2. Why did I put 15 next to the 3? I know 3 divides into 15. Why did I put the 2 next to the 10? I know 2 divides into 10. Could I have switched them? Absolutely. I could have switched them if I wanted to. Split the problem into 2 groups. So, 2 groups, I'll use my highlighter. There's group 1. There's group 2. There's group 1, there's group 2. So now we factor it by grouping. Step 6 is, well, steps 5 and 6 are where you use grouping. This is where you use grouping. Out of the first group, you can divide by 3, and you can take out y. So 3y and y plus 5. The second group, notice that it begins with a negative. If it begins with a negative, you take out the negative. And you can divide by 2. You get y plus 5 again. I told you, if they match, then you're correct. If they match, you've done it correctly. If you don't match, you did something wrong. So whatever match gets written first. cross them out. Whatever is left over gets written second. And the 3y is the GCF at the start of the problem. That's GCF at the start of the problem. So again, it's not a hard problem, but it is a problem that's going to force you to pay attention to what you're doing. Step one, you have to know how to do GCF. There's no way around that. You either know how to do it or you don't. Identify the values. That's easy if you know where things are located. Step three is where you do MAF. You spend a week doing MAF. Step four is taking your two numbers and splitting the problem up. Step five, you put it into two groups. Step six, you use grouping. And then step seven, you write your answer. So for some of you, yes, you have to go slow. You have to go slow. That's why on the first homework assignment for this, it literally is going to force you to go slow because it's going to force you to do it part by part. It's literally going to force you to do it part by part. Part A, find a GCF. Part B, identify A, B, and C. Part C, transform it to MAF. It will literally force you to do it part by part. So that you can get used to it. Any questions before we remind ourselves what is due? No, that's Cortana on my computer. I'll leave her out. But I'll deal with that later. So go ahead and stop my